Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast with Jennifer McCarville. Because childhood has changed, but children have not.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer McCarville. Welcome to the Save Childhood podcast. Today I'm here with Sophia Tuma. She is our book club coordinator for parents here at our Marvelously Made School for Young Children. We call that the Book Talk. And if you've listened to some of our other book talk discussions, we do that because the children have a book club. We love reading and we love to nurture a love of reading in the parents and the children. Mm-hmm. So we have book talks where the grown-ups come together, and then we like to do a recording of some of those topics, the books that we've talked about as a group. And Sophia leads that for our school community and does just a really beautiful job. So I'm gonna turn it over and let everybody meet her, learn a little bit about you, and then let's hear about this book.
Awesome. So thank you for having me. It's good to be back. So I have 3 little guys in our school, and all in different areas, and they're just loving it and learning at their own pace, and it's a beautiful thing. We've been here about 5 years, so I was blessed with the book talks early on, and now I get to lead them. So it's
blessing
exciting.
Lots of other people.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would be at them anyway, so I thought, well, might as well jump right in, and
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So this book, The Yes Brain by Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson, it was just packed with the brain science and the development, right? Just really great age and stage things for us to know. And what an incredible resource for parents to be reminded of those developmental stages. And because I feel like we can naturally come to expect things from our children based on either their behaviors or their experiences or even their personality traits. Like, oh, they should be able to handle that. But then we're baffled when they can't. And there's a tantrum or there's something. So they misbehave. And I say it like that because we learn in this book that one, behavior is communication, right? They're not good or bad. They're trying to tell us something. And 2, when their brain is still developing, sometimes they can't respond the way you would like them to. They can't emotionally regulate. They can't cope in that moment, and we expect them to.
We do. That's true of adults too.
And it is.
Just so because true. We tend to be better at that because we've had experience and maturation and strategies we've developed. But if we really think about it, that they're whole people, just like we are. And when we have something surprising, shocking, upsetting happen, it takes us some time too to process, and so they feel things immediately and haven't yet developed the skills, the strategy, the brain maturation, the development to be able to know what to do with those feelings. Absolutely. So it's just a human challenge, but as we're raising children, they are more likely to respond quickly. Yeah. So tell us what the Yes Brain is.
So the Yes Brain, they call it just a brain that's more flexible, curious, resilient. They're able to take on life's challenges and overcome. They're going to be able to emotionally regulate. They're going to have tools to be able to navigate situations and relationships. And so the book was full of just learning how to transition to a yes brain. For example, from a no brain state of just being maybe reactive and fearful or rigid and shutting down and not taking on challenges based on just that lack of experience and being able to overcome them. So
he really talks about these 3 brain states, right? So you have the no brain, which is the red zone.
Oh, yes, the zones.
The zones, these not states, these zones, that's what he calls them. So you have the red zone, and then in the middle you have the green zone, which is like the sweet spot, the growing spot, the resting spot, and then you have at the bottom the blue zone. So the blue zone, the shutdown, the freeze, the flight, mostly the freeze, the shutdown, right? Yep. And then the red brain, understandably, we like that color red for things that are just really intense. And I say that I'm wearing my red glasses, so intense today, but But we associate red with being very intense, right? And so
it's more the reactive zone, right? So you can, when you come across something that is uncomfortable or challenging and you don't have that capacity, the brain development there or experience, you can react into that red zone or just shut down into the blue zone. So and that can be physically removing, some children leave, some children just, they just turn into kind of.
Well, and both of them,
right? I know.
Both authors, they talk a lot about how you're going to help children go from whichever of those zones on the outsides to move them into the green, and to give them the strategies to move themselves into the green.
Yes, and it talks about widening your green zone. So you have that green in the middle, and you're just widening your range of tolerance so that you're in that green zone more, and you can come back to it more quickly. So.
Those are the goals for everyone.
For everybody. And on that note, I loved in the book that the layout was, an introduction chapter, but then for each fundamental of the yes brain, which we'll go over in just a minute, but for each of those sections, discussing those strategies, what a yes brain would look like, what a no brain would look like, a response. But also at the end of each of those chapters, there was a my yes brain, and that was working on the adults and being able to see what's going on with you and things you're bringing from the past, your reactive states, and how are you handling those red and blue zones. And so I thought that was really great to have that reflection piece at the end of each chapter.
Well, and I know when we had our talk, there were several parents in the conversation who said this was actually a little convicting for me, which is good, but they were genuinely grateful, I think, for that opportunity built into those every chapter to say, what is it in me that I need to be aware of, that I need to address in order to be able to help my child develop the skills and the strategies to know what to do with all of the feelings so that they can, if we can't do that, it's really hard to help children do that, right?
It is. It's very hard. And I had this wasn't actually at the book talk, but just a fun comment a mom said to me recently was, if I ever want to know what I'm saying or phrases I'm using, I just listen to my children. And it's so true that, they learn so much from us, and they maybe want to be like us. So we aren't oblivious to that, but also it's so important to be aware of.
Yeah, it really is. And so that they built that in to this book was I think such a great tool, such a useful tool. And I can say in the 35-ish years I've been in early childhood education that I see parents being more receptive and aware of that than ever before. I feel like as we've all grown and learned more as a society about the brain science, development, etc., we adults are realizing, the way it happened with me or for me may not actually be the best way. I may actually, I skipped that place of being able to develop these tools and strategies, right? I feel like I've seen a huge shift in that, and that's encouraging. So, and I think it's things like listening to helpful podcasts and reading books and being in book clubs or book talks about the job we're doing.
Absolutely, having that community and just the resources first and foremost. Podcasts,
so many
books,
resources.
So many resources. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but
and sometimes they're not good. That's you have to have discernment, But resources that are based on development, on brain science, on honoring the way children and human beings are designed. Those things, number one, they're never outdated. We were talking about that. Yes. This book was written in 2018, which is many lifetimes ago.
When you think about
by our
technology, and the speed of things these days.
But when you are using resources that are based on the brain science and the development, they don't change, because what we know is childhood has changed, right? But children have not. Because we still grow and develop the same way. And so anything that's going to be based on the science, and of course then we get new science, right? The new science. But the new science, when you dig deep, in my experience, always supports the old science. So that's a real good thing to look at with all the resources we can be overwhelmed with and inundated with. There are so many, and there are a lot of good ones. That discernment's important.
Yeah, you made me think of the books that they've written. So he has several books, starting with back in 2004, as we're talking about dating things. Parenting from the Inside Out was one. And then in 2011, a pretty popular one, I think, is The Whole Brain Child. And then No Drama Discipline, and then The Yes Brain. And as far as, I had one parent say, I read The Whole Brain Child, and I was just curious, what's this one gonna do that's so different? And I like the way he explained it. He said it's more of a continuation and an extension of what we said in The Whole Brain Child. So if you have read that one and you're curious about how this one's gonna delve deeper, it was definitely more specific to navigating the yes and no brain. And The Whole Brain Child was really, I actually only read a part of it. Seven years ago, it was recommended to me.
Wow.
When my oldest one was very little. And I did only get through about a third of it, and then I was skimming and looking for things, but I think at that time I wasn't quite ready for it.
Right, you might not be ready. Right. And I mean, also you had two other little ones, and then, thank goodness for audiobooks. For so many of our parents, I know, really utilize audiobooks.
I do both, but yes, audiobooks are so helpful.
Which is something that is so important if you lead a book talk like this, a group like this. I know that Sophia is fantastic at also looking at making sure that there is an audiobook version, if at all possible, and also looking at how long the audiobook is, because time is important and limited, and so no wonder you didn't finish the book. That
one was quite a bit longer.
I have not read that book. So this parent that mentioned that to you, that asked the question, which is so smart, about the Whole Brain Child, did he or she read this one?
She did end up reading it, and she said she actually said, I feel like I should have started there, because maybe it was more specific to actionable points, I believe she said. So having, again, unfortunately I haven't read to compare, but maybe more specifically towards putting into action, enforcing or encouraging those yes brain qualities.
Interesting. That was what I was wondering. Is it good to read The Whole Brain Child first or the yes brain? And so it sounds like she felt like the yes brain. Or for her, maybe situationally, but I feel like putting it into practice is what she was referring to. So she also could just be in a different place in her parenting journey.
And I feel like that's why I didn't finish it 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So you get different things with the number of children you have at the time, or where you are with that, and the season is so.
I think, which is why when you get important. A good book, a good tool, it's helpful to read it again in a few years too.
That's true.
And sometimes I think there are so many choices and so many new choices. Rereading something seems almost frivolous, or
it does. It seems like, oh well, I shouldn't take time to reread that, or at least this is my thought process sometimes. I should read the newest thing,
right?
And sometimes that's great with certain areas, technology, of course, or right. But like you said, with the development, and I only had 2 children when that was recommended to me. Now I have 3, and now they're much older, so it might be really helpful to read more, maybe more of a broad realm of the development of the brain. The Whole Brain Child is what I seem to remember, that really helping you understand.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I think that we know why she felt like this had more actionable steps.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest tools in here that might have given her actionable steps, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know if you interpret that way too, but I'm thinking that this is
the kids,
the children's like the comic strip type information. So if you're looking at YouTube, I think you can kind of see what we're talking about here. But
at the end of each chapter, similarly to the My Yes Brain sections, there are children's Yes Brain sections. And looking at those little comic strips with them specifically. And that was kind of a funny concept for me, and I'm guilty of not having, gone to grab my boys and do it as I was reading this book. But I'm used to like, oh, that's my parenting book. They say, well, what are you reading? And I'm like, oh, well, that's for moms and dads, So I'm not so used to. I could open it up and say, well, this section's for you.
Right.
That's kind of a funny thought.
It's a unique thing.
It is a very unique thing, but just a really neat layout to have to like, okay, I'm going to focus on me. What do I need to work on? Okay, these are actionable points. Let's see. Yes Brain Kids is what that's called, the Yes Brain Kids sections, and also lots of resources with these authors, I think. But this was when I purchased it on Audible.
Okay.
I was able to gain access, and I think when you purchase a hard copy too, you go into the website and you can still do this. So that's something to look into.
That's true.
As far as a resource when you purchase a copy of the book. But it's it's a Yes Brain kind of PDF series, and I thought, oh, it's just all of the comics a little bigger, and so maybe a nice resource to print out and have when you're going through those with your kids.
Right.
Just looking at, at one point I'm looking at shower your kids with the 4 S's, being safe, seen, soothed, and secure. So, and then, illustrations of the red and green and blue zone and things to utilize in that regard.
Because when the children get a little bit older, and I'm thinking around 4 years old, and I'm going to sit down with my granddaughter and read some of these with her, but they're learning what to do with these big feelings, and they're learning how to get attention when they have these feelings, right?
Yes.
So sometimes that attention is I'm going to run, and while that's like a fight or flight kind of situation, it's time for them to calm down, and they know eventually someone will come and help me. I think a lot of them do that. Some of them just really want to be alone until they're ready to come back. Yes. But they know that they're struggling at times with feelings and with resolutions to trouble and challenges. So to be able to normalize it for them with these comic strips and say, when you're feeling like this, this is one way you can. And of course, what we do know is working with children when they're not in the green zone is not beneficial. Right? So having these conversations with them when they're not in conflict, when they're not under stress, when you're just talking with them, they have a much better chance of accessing that information in moments of stress later.
And it's so hard for me to wait for the green zone to come back, because I think, I just want to address it right now.
Right.
So
now's the time.
Now's the time, but it's not the time. So that's a real struggle for me. I mean, you would think, but I just really want it to be, I think, especially, and it's by age too, in a way, when I go back to things with my 5-year-old compared to with my 8-year-old, certain things aren't remembered, they're just so happy now. I mean, I feel like with the younger ones, it's, it's still a worthy talk to have, but it's different.
It is.
And so acknowledging that and giving yourself a little grace there. It's just
so
the
important.
repetition and the modeling and the practice. I like how they said at one point, childhood is about experiencing a wide range of emotions in a safe environment. And this means losing control sometimes.
Right.
So it's a good reminder to have grace for that.
I think there's an expectation for parents and teachers, educators alike, that children always are happy. They're always content or happy or compliant or, at all the positive, what we consider the positive things. And that's just not realistic, right? And so in order to develop a rich emotional intelligence, they have to actually have feelings and learn how to walk through them and come out on the other side okay. And so one of the beautiful strategies to develop as anyone who has or works with children, when I call it those children who will immediately cry loudly, I call it setting off their alarm, like they're letting you know right now, I'm gonna need some help. Right but you have to look for all those different personalities and whether they're going into the blue zone or the red zone or the, and calmly approach gently and not rush in, and know that if nobody's in danger, it's okay for them to have big, unpleasant, hard feelings sometimes. It's being in a supportive environment consistently where they're not left in those feelings to go into just despair, to kind of spiral into despair. But you can't flip a switch and turn it off. They have to walk through those feelings and learn how to take the breaths and learn how to, center their kind of overwhelm.
Yes. Yeah, and things like At one point, one of the tools was the hand on your heart and hand on your belly, and I really enjoyed. I'm thinking, when am I going to do that? Sometimes I just think, okay, realistically, with our 3 boys in our home, we just seem like we're always going. But they mentioned doing it at bedtime every night, so it just becomes a pattern and a routine, and they're already in bed and they're calming down. So getting something into their daily rhythm, so that when they're in that state, it's more automatic and it's not as much of use that tool.
Right.
It's like when they do it, they might actually feel it, like, oh yeah,
Right.
that's calming, or they think about that calming state that they've been doing it in for bedtime.
Well, and I think another really important thing about that, which you touched on earlier, is the children wanting to be like the adults in their world. Whether, as they get older and they are intentionally thinking, I really admire that person, or I want to be like my dad, or I want to, before that, they are going to copy us. That they'll always copy what you do, and they may not hear what you say. So if we're taking a moment when we're maybe flustered or things are, and they see us and they're like, what are you doing? And you're like, well, I'm just kind of trying to calm my body down because I was really flustered when I dropped the groceries on the floor when we came in, and then I stepped on the strawberries. And so I'm trying to calm my body down. And a quick little thing where they see you practicing those things, or taking a deep breath, or whatever, is working for you, and telling them, oh, I'm just trying to really calm my body down because I was feeling pretty upset. And that's it. That's a beautiful teaching of how to handle things when they feel big.
Right. And saying it out loud, as redundant it may feel to us in our own minds, I found it makes sense. Or I guess saying, oh, I just need a minute. Well, that says something too, but working up to being able to explain the calm down. I agree.
Yeah,
It's
I think,
really nice.
and these comic strips do that as well. They say, we know that we all have these feelings sometimes, and here's a way that we can walk through that.
Yes.
But you don't read the comic strip or teach the lesson just once. And that tends to be what's really hard a lot of times for the adults, is like, I've talked to them and I've supported them and I've talked to them over and over. Well, they're just not ready to receive it in the way that they need to yet, but it's not in vain.
Nope.
It's not in vain. So I think that's an important thing too. I know I've shared this story probably with you before, but there was one little guy all year long. He had a lot going on in his brain, which they all do, but using the words that he needed to articulate when the children, his peers around him, entered his space or, messed up something he was doing, rather than being able to access the language, he would get really angry and quiet, and he would do something to retaliate, which is understandable. When someone does something to us, that's the reaction until we develop better strategies and an ability to take those breaths. But anyway, all year long, we had these conversations, and it was May when someone had knocked down something he had built, and so he hit them in the stomach. And this is what we call the thing before the thing, because he was upset, so he hit the other child, but what do we see? We see him hit the other child. And that tends to get all of the attention and all of the power, and which is really concerning. We have to really be careful of that. So having these conversations to find out what motivated the hitting. So anyway, he's sitting with me and he says, I said, tell me about what happened. And he said, well, I built this tower, and then he came and he knocked it down with his hands, and then I hit him in the stomach. And he said, and now I see that was not a very good choice. And I'll never forget his cadence in that. And now I see, and he stuck his little finger up in the air, and now I see. And I thought, oh my gosh, May, the summer came and checked. It took us 9 months, but it was so there for him. And that was a huge step of growth. And I knew that he was going to move on to that next year, and he was going to be able to start implementing that restraint and that gathering of his big feelings. And
so sweet.
It was so sweet, but it took a long time,
And that can be difficult on the adults in the situation, and hard to think, okay, over and over and over again. And I know they address at some point to focus on the long term, and just you're in a long term. It's a long-term goal, and you're going to see the benefits later on. But also at one point, they talk about staying in the now. and not projecting all of these emotions that they're having and all of these crazy behaviors we might view as, oh my goodness, what kind of teenager are they going to be? What kind of adult are they going to be? So they caution that as well. And I liked that they said at one point, these behaviors don't mean, or something's not wrong with you. So as we're saying with all of this, what did we say? A meaningful life is an emotional life, right?
I think that's a really good.
And acknowledging that it's not just children. We all have these big emotions. So partnering with them to help figure that out. But I guess, I never talked about the fundamentals of the yes brain.
We need to do that now, don't
Just
we?
a little bit.
It's kind of important, right?
It's the whole layout of the book.
Before we go there, I think that an important point is always that in helping children learn what to do with these feelings and these reactions and these emotions, never are we, nor were the authors, implying that the children should do whatever they want and we shouldn't give them boundaries, or we shouldn't help them know where, what's acceptable in any way. That is never the intention. And I think a lot of people that I work with around the subject of supporting children through challenges, behaviors, emotional dysregulation, that their takeaway, unfortunately, is then I just won't tell them no. Then I won't give them a boundary. And that is not healthy either. The thing is that we need to be able to say, that's not okay, or we're not going to do that today, and they can get upset, and we can walk through that.
Yes.
But it's not okay. That doesn't mean that that's a blank slate to talk hatefully, to not learn the ways to help develop a regulation of their own. So I think that's really important.
Yes, I mean, a big phrase in my home right now with our ages, or just maybe it'll go through teenage years, I don't know, but it's that's not an option right now.
It's not an option right now.
I try to talk as little as possible because I can overtalk, not overshadow, but just I talk a lot, and so I really have to focus on phrases that help me to get the point across. So that's not an option right
and
now.
In those times when they are so upset, we should talk less.
Yes,
and I think that we are just naturally, especially mothers, are just biologically wired to explain and try to rationalize and carry on. And saying that's not an option right now is completely appropriate. And that you're not giving fuel to the fire. You're not trying to explain it. Often causes them to argue because they're trying to explain themselves. They're trying to justify why they need it, and so also acknowledging, if I know you were really looking forward to going to the zoo today, and now it is pouring down rain and we can't go. That's disappointing.
It is.
But that's not a choice now. And so acknowledging, I understand why you're feeling that, but this is the boundary.
Yeah, and sometimes I know it's hard for me to acknowledge it enough in the moment for them to get past that, right? Acknowledge it enough and say, and it's not an option right now, and we can talk about it more when you're calm. And that doesn't always work, so it's not.
Do they always want to talk about it later?
Sometimes my older one will, especially, it will want to discuss that, and it's really beautiful to see with that age, just there's more understanding, there's more coming out of those conversations, and like, well, I guess I see why that, I'm like, oh, that's so nice that we're just starting to understand a little bit more of each other.
Yeah, to see the fruit of all that you've poured in for these years, right? And we have to wait for it. We have to trust that process of growing and learning and pouring in and setting boundaries.
Yeah. And also with having 3, I have very different personalities. So the way things come out for each of them, I have, a blue zone, a red zone, and then a little bit of both. And I think that was one of our jokes in the book talk, is we need a little rainbow bridge of purple between the blue and the red zone, because one parent said, mine gets really quiet, but in a very angry way. And it's like a shutdown, but there's so much anger within. So
you can just feel that energy.
You can feel it, right?
Right.
But one thing I thought of was the push, when to push in and push a little bit for safe challenges, and when to be the cushion to that safe space. So that made me think of the boundaries, right? And it's not just all yes, it's when can they handle this challenge, because that's a great opportunity to practice these skills. So
yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch base with
I know
having those big feelings, and still, that's a yes brain doesn't mean a yes parent or a yes grown up all the time. Oh, just go ahead, because you've got to figure out what to do with those feelings. I'm not going to tell you no because you might get upset. It's having the tools to know how to help them navigate the upset and have the feelings, but not be alone in them. It's such a delicate thing, and it really does depend on the child.
Do they feel safe, seen, soothed, and secured while they're irate? Who knows? But when we're there presently or in the space, or we can try to do that for them.
Yeah.
It's kind of the best we can do. Sometimes.
I know I have seen a lot of this, the gentle parenting, which we're not going to talk about that as a whole big topic. I know that's a Pandora's box, but gentle parenting, where I have seen toddlers, which of course breaks my heart that you would even record your toddler in these moments of such stress, but I know the intention was pure, I'm sure. But toddlers just really out of control emotionally, just writhing on the floor and crying and screaming, and the parent sitting close by, to the point where they've crossed a line of allowing that for so long that the child is just exhausted, just completely emotionally drained and exhausted. And that, to me, that's not exactly the goal, or what I consider co-regulation to be, which would be a little more involved. You give them a little space, but you say, take a deep breath. Every once in a while you say something to try to help them. But these children are literally, the adults are close by physically, and while that is an important strategy in some, it depends, but when they're just spiraling and we're not stepping in at all to just remind them, a touch point, like, I'm right here. I'm here if you need me. Okay, when you're screaming like that, it's hurting my ears. If it gets to that point, and that child just needs an anchor. So there's that balance of, again, you're giving them a boundary, but you're giving them the balance of space so that they don't feel alone.
Right, and that's huge. I know, and sometimes one of mine I couldn't get close to at all. Right, they're just those personalities didn't want any touch, so that's hard. And then there's the balance of some could bring one of them outside. That was huge. Usually, we had some night terror, kind of night attacks for a while there in the younger years, and bringing out onto our porch and just the calm and the dark, that was really nice. And then for my youngest, he will talk to any puppet or stuffed animal that whether he's in the red or not.
Yeah.
If I can, and you would think I would remember, right? But sometimes I'm like, oh,
the puppet.
Where's the closest stuffy, right? And you just, they might peek around the corner and say, what's wrong? And,
it's amazing. It's amazing how that works.
But that wouldn't have worked. One of my other ones would have hit the puppet.
Right. I mean, and that's okay. It's learning how to help them. Is
learning the personalities. Yes.
It's a job.
It's a job.
It really is, but it's just really, really important. And it can make the journey of teaching, educating, parenting a lot more joyful in the long run. That's the understanding. This is how the brain works, and this is where to meet them. So it's a great tool.
Yeah, the goal of making these connections and establishing that emotionally safe and secure connection early on, slowly, is the goal, right? So that you can see those benefits later.
Yeah, if we can just wrap our brains around the long game with everything that has to do with raising children. It's a long journey, and that's okay, but we're pouring in by example, by helping develop the strategies at the right time for the temperament and the development of the child. So, okay, so you definitely need to talk about the whole concept of this book.
A little bit. I mean, it's hard because there are so many areas you want to jump into, but they broke it down into the 4 fundamentals that are balance, resilience, insight, and empathy. And so the whole layout of the book is a chapter on each of those. And I guess just diving into each with the tools. So I know, for example, talking about the zones and the balance and really those windows of tolerance, things that affect that, from talking about sleep to overscheduling. And there's just so much in there. Yes,
talking about that balanced brain. I know. I think it was important to note, they talked about that the first step in discipline is not teaching, even though the word discipline does mean to teach. But that's not the first step. The first step is calming and helping them learn how to calm.
Yeah, so that you can do other things from a calm state.
Yeah. And even once they've learned to calm, we don't jump right in with the verbal lessons, but we actually allow them to fully calm. You can talk about it later.
Well, and I think reality is when they're calm, the energy in the room is calmer. So I'm not going to be able to react and speak as calmly to a child in the red or even blue,
right,
than with a green. So
because there's also something biologically wired in parents too, that when the children are in the blue zone, when they're hiding or running, that it's so hard not to connect with them, that causes a lot of, really hard, powerful energy in the adults. I know that because you want to help. You want to, I had a child, my children are both adults now, in their mid-late 20s, but when one of them in particular was young, what they needed was space and to be away from me when they were upset. And that was so hard for me because, you have the instinct to mother, to hug them, to stroke their hair, to tell them it's going to be okay. And that was not going to work. And it took me a while because that's how I'm wired. But that's not how that child's wired. And so that was a huge learning curve for me. Luckily, children have a lot of grace and we love them big. So they give us some space for learning curves.
And lots of practice.
Yeah, and lots of practice. So anyway, I love that about that balanced brain and remembering to help balance the brain before we can even discipline and teach. Then we've got to calm is the first step. Yeah.
And then along those lines of your example from one of your children is the integration sweet spot, and how it can be easy for some parents to create a version of their children that they want and integrate so much that they're just linked in this deep way. But they talk about being differentiated enough while also that safe or secure, connected, linked, or having that linked relationship. So anyway, a balance, right? They have an interest in jumping into it like, and it's really maybe your dream that never happened.
Right.
So fostering their, development into the child, the uniqueness of who they're going to be.
Yes, and I think so often we see that reflection of ourselves in our children, which is a beautiful thing, right? It's a crazy biological, it's crazy and so cool to see as a parent, but they are their own unique people. They are. And even if we think they're just like us, they're not. They're just like them. So, but yeah, I think, and we can't get them in that calming state if we're not calm. And I love, they also talked about children borrow the calm from the grown-ups.
Oh, I love that.
So when we enter into it, like I was saying, even like at the school when the children are setting off their alarm or their, like I call it, it's such a beautiful thing to see. The teachers here are just so amazing, and it's beautiful to see them calmly approach, calmly become present and become in their view, just giving them a calm energy. They're going to borrow that for a little while, and it does work most of the time.
It does, and I'm definitely guilty of not maintaining that calm, and I guess it's a good reminder because I can absolutely see things just escalate when I'm not calm and they're not calm.
Right.
And we just go back and forth. It doesn't work.
But we are human.
We're human, and that happens, and then I'm reminded, oh, that doesn't work. Okay.
Yeah. And if we can
next opportunity in about 10 minutes.
I didn't have any calm for you to borrow, so
nope.
my bank is empty. I don't have any more savings in that area.
Right.
But remembering that and kind of putting those little things in our tool belt as the adults, it's saying like, oh, okay, I've got to let them borrow my calm. They're going to be able to find their own. But it's a beautiful anchor. Share your calm. So.
Yeah. Let's see. So balance is huge. Resilience. That's where when do you push in and when do you provide the cushion? Just really helping them, to be resilient in life and giving them these tools to approach relationships or experiences.
Well, resilience is that balance too, right? Because it's the not rushing in, but like I was talking about a minute ago, not being too far away that they spiral.
Right.
If your presence can help. So resilience is about balance too.
It really is. And that's actually the section where the safe, seen, soothed, and secure is. Like, how are they going to feel that in that situation? And it depends, right?
Right. Yeah, but definitely in order to have that resilience to be able to bounce back, we have to figure out that sweet spot for this child needs me to pick them up and be really present physically, and that child needs some space, but I also need to check in, give them a few minutes and then go and, knock on the door and say, hey, I just want you to know, when you're ready, I'm here. Can I bring you, a glass of water? Is there anything you need right now? Right. I'm here. You are not alone in these big hard feelings. We're human. We need that, all of us. So that resilience can't come without meeting them in those spaces of not too far away and not too close.
And then let's see, insight, just the ability to look within and understand ourselves. So that's huge, right? And within that section, I really enjoyed how they gave an example about a mother being in a car after she'd done this beautiful evening or afternoon of a movie, and she even bought the expensive popcorn, and then on the short drive home, the kids are just losing it, And in that moment you think, oh, that was for naught. I'm going to tell them how ungrateful they are and all these things. And then they talked about being able to shift to being a spectator, and when you're a player and being in the moment, and when can you shift out and just be a spectator, and about understanding what's going on within yourself, but seeing it from above, or just the outside of, okay, they're overstimulated, or they're tired, or maybe they're hungry again, and then just being able to navigate from a calmer state by turning into a spectator.
So that's such a great tool, right? Turn into a spectator, so that you can kind of figure out what's going on. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard adults saying to children, like, don't you know we brought you here to have a great time? Like you see it at like amusement parks and things where, where parents have like poured their life savings into a vacation, and they're like, we are having fun. The children don't know. The children have no concept of that. And us saying to them, don't you know I just took you to a movie and bought you the great popcorn and we just had a wonderful afternoon? They're like, none of that matters right now. I can't understand that concept. It's so beyond my comprehension. So that's not going to teach them what they need to know to learn to listen to themselves and to learn how to be insightful and understand what's going on inside. They don't understand that at all, but I hear it a lot, and it's just, we understand it too. We understand why adults would say that, but that conversation is just between adults where you think, oh my goodness, So I think that's important. One of the phrases that I think was really valuable from this chapter 4 was, you've got to name it to tame it.
Yes.
Where they were talking about helping them. That's what being insightful is. What is going on?
Yeah.
How am I feeling?
Within yourself, right?
And why am I reacting this way to those feelings? So helping our children, and that's another way that those comic drawings come in handy.
Is the kids section.
Yeah, the children's section is knowing to name it. This is what's going on, so that eventually they can tame it on their own.
Right.
It's hard because we can't tame it for them.
We can't.
And that's a brain shift. I can't tame it for them, which is what I know I wanted to do so many times, and still as a teacher when I'm in the classroom. It would be lovely to be able to rationalize them through something or help them see an adult perspective, but they have to have those own experiences.
They do.
And then they've got to learn to tame it.
Yes.
So.
The power of the pause is another. Maybe it's just because I use it and need it so much, but teaching them the power of the pause, and to be able to pause before you react, so that in my head I'm going to pause so I don't react, and I can respond.
Right.
I can respond with something either thoughtful or calm, and I use that a lot in mothering. I mean, it's so much like one of the phrases at school: breathe and underreact. Yeah. So before you do or say anything, take a breath
and underreact. And then we always talk about how you will probably regret overreacting, but you rarely regret underreacting. Like I don't even know that I ever have regretted underreacting, but I'll give I don't want to give it an extreme yes or no, but you just don't usually regret underreacting. So it's always the right choice. It really is.
Yeah. So the fourth foundation of theirs, or fundamental, was empathy. And wow, I thought, oh, this one's such a hard one for me, of all my different ages of the boys, and like, wow, when is it going to come naturally for them to be empathetic with each other? And so it was really good for me to read, and just thinking about, they talk about an empathy radar, and just activating, that in social situations, and really picking up on things and helping in the way we communicate with them about situations, and not, what was an example, you're in a situation and a child runs away, and it's like, instead of saying something like, wow, that kid ran off, or judging it in some way, saying, I wonder what happened, and just the little gentle probing questions for them to not just label it necessarily from the outsider, but really think, oh, I wonder, maybe I wonder is for me. Great. I wonder what's going on, or I wonder how they're feeling. And then some examples I loved were just examples of things to communicate with them and kind of teach them, and have tools like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm really sorry that happened, or because I feel like I know with two of my personalities at home, between the three boys at least, they can kind of just observe and get kind of frozen, like maybe it was an accident, maybe something happened, and they just kind of freeze up, and it's like they don't really know what to say, because maybe they didn't mean it, or maybe they don't know what happened. But just how beautiful to say, I don't really know what happened, I'm really sorry you're hurt. That's a really huge step for them, I think. So working on maybe that blue zone, for me particularly, I resonated with that.
Well, and I think that developing in children that genuine empathy is vitally important for their lifelong happiness, for their relationships, for society, for if we know how to feel for other people, we are better people. And it makes life so much easier when you come from that place of compassion and empathy. But when they're young, they are designed to protect themselves. So talking about like, when is that going to happen? When are they going to, consider the other person's point of view at all, or even first before they jump on something? And, that takes years, because biologically they have to get their needs met, and so they only see themselves. And so, but as we model, and the core of this is having a good relationship, a loving, supportive relationship. It's all about relationship, because outside of loving, supportive relationships, empathy cannot grow.
Right.
It really has to be that you say, I'm not sure what happened, but I love you, I care about you, and I can tell that you're upset, and I'm really sorry. That's so powerful. We don't even have to understand sometimes, and we know we can't fix things.
And feel loved.
And your feelings matter, what's happening to you, it really impacts me because I care. And that modeling of empathy, and taking the time and having the space to model the empathy, to be in relationship. We've got to slow down. We've got to create space to spend in moments and in feelings and in situations. But children and families are moving so fast that who's got time to recognize their feelings, to listen to their bodies, to delve into that relationship? When you're not spending time with your children in your classroom, the agenda is just so tight, the schedule is just so rigid, and we've got to get to a place where we realize that they're human beings, and they're away from the home for the longest periods of time in history now. In a classroom, in a traditional, what we call traditional environment, or they're in childcare because both families are working. So you got to make sure that somehow you find time not to worry about the dishes in the evening and I've been there. I get it. And I went back to work when my daughter was 4, and then I stayed home again, and then I went back to work. I had children growing up at home, and I was working some of that time full time. And of course, being a homemaker is a full-time job. You're busy. There are things you're doing. But to take that time and say, I've got to connect. I've got to build this deep relationship, because at the core, you are nurturing human beings, you know? And the rest of those things will wait. And you have to constantly tell yourself that, because there's nothing more important than that relationship. So
that's so very true. Giving yourself lots of grace there, and just
it's hard.
Yeah. It can be hard.
Involving
So
them in the
hard.
cleanup if you can, you know.
Yes.
But and it doesn't mean also, I think that we also have this idea that we are supposed to be our child's playmate and be available in that way all the time, which that's not what I'm saying. You know, helping them by developing relationship and emotional security and meeting them in those places, they have peace and are able to play on their own and are able to be close by doing their thing because they have that connection.
I had a really funny situation just yesterday where we're trying to establish a quiet time so we can all have a little bit of, you know, just time to ourselves, reading, looking at books, puzzles. And so we're attempting some level time frame, you know, 5 to 8 years old of that.
Right.
And they were just really not feeling it yesterday. And even my oldest said, why do we have to do this? You know, it's so long. And I said, well, you know, let's just see how long we can do it today. And then the funniest part was we were done and we went outside, and then they were all right there with me. And I thought, guys, you know, we were, and there was that little bit of me that kind of wanted to be outside and enjoy the outside and let them play.
Right.
Like, what are you doing? You really didn't want to be inside, you know, by yourselves. Go play together. And then when my older, he kind of just grinned, like, oh, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, he's like, I can see the logic in that, or the illogic in that.
And they did, you know, they had a snack, but I think the need was that I still need food. So, you know, we figured out what needed to be met. But
right,
it was ironic. And one thing, another transition of communication within the empathy section was in conflicts. Instead of saying you did this to me, just focusing on I feel this from what I'm going through. You know, so really, and I have those dynamics too, and I'm thinking, focus on you. The only person you can change or control is yourself. So finding words for that is often hard. I feel like I found Sally, focus on yourself. but from that perspective,
you take care of you.
You take care of you. It never sounds great.
It doesn't.
But really, it's important to focus on how you are affected instead of that just pointing and blaming. So I feel like that's a big step, maybe.
Yeah,
and to try to encourage.
I can see that for sure. Well, and saying to them, like, you know, you control you, right? So, and just kind of gently reminding them that they have the power over themselves once they're mature enough and have enough tools to execute those. But just reminding them, like, you know what? It's okay. You're not in charge of the whole world. You're not in charge of your siblings. You're not in charge of your classmates. You're not in charge of, you know, without all those words. A simple, you know what? You control you. I'm going to help him. I'm going to help her. And then, you know, they also see that example of how we walk through all of those things with people.
Yes.
You know, the example is powerful. The modeling.
Example is very powerful.
Yeah.
And then I get, but I'm in control of my body. You're not in control.
That comes back at you every time.
Comes back at you every time.
Well, everything does.
Not necessarily.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but you need me right now. So.
But you
yeah. And yeah, there are challenges, and that's why the conversation keeps going. So as we wrap this up, is there any final takeaway, or do you have any big picture, no pressure? You know, like, is there any big thing you don't want to miss, or you want to remind us about that this book is so valuable for?
Just refocusing those expectations and keeping that perspective of a safe place for all those emotions. I think that's huge because, I mean, it comes down to that yes brain, no brain, and just being able to navigate. And but the perspective and not getting so set into our daily rhythm, like, oh, they should be able to do that.
Right.
Oh, they've done this before, but what about the weather, the time of day, and the people around? We don't think about that, and those being new circumstances or challenges to overcome.
That's so important.
So for me, it was a lot about just not becoming stagnant in my daily rhythm and working with them, but constantly assessing, okay, like you said, the thing before the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it coming from? The power in the pause is big for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's so good.
yeah.
Well, and I like you were saying about that, like the circumstances are never exactly the same. So we feel like I've told them, we've talked about this 5 times in the last 2 days, but in those times it's different time of day. Did they get enough sleep? Have they had enough protein?
Right.
Have they,
exactly. Sleep and food are huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
And those things are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So while we've said it in similar scenarios, it's still not exactly the same. You're not dealing with the exact same physiological situation for the child, right? Or for you, or for what else is going on. I think that's so powerful. I think an important thing for me a big takeaway for me about this book is that the yes brain's for everyone. The yes brain is something that we all need to master. The children need our help figuring this out, and we can figure it out together.
That's
But, talking to the adults, making a point of talking to the adults about like that check-in, and then having a section for the children that helps them kind of break that down and help plant those seeds and start navigating it. But developing a yes brain is something that everyone can benefit from.
Yes.
Yes.
So too. Yes.
Let's keep the conversation going. So we hope that you follow us on social media. We're on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And apparently it's more than just liking. We need you to comment and share and help us continue to spread the message of honoring brain science, honoring development so we can save childhood. It's important work. We have savechildhood.org, which is our website. And there you'll see the 14 tenets of saving childhood laid out, because we know that if we would all do these 14 things for children, we would save childhood for a generation. And once you do that for one generation, it happens for the next and the next. And while childhood has changed, children have not. So keep looking for the brain science, keep following the development, and rest in knowing that that is the best way to honor children and give them what they need. So thanks for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you on social media.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. To learn more and join the movement, go to savechildhood.org.